Hi everyone, this is Hokum again from the Dad's Clan. I've been asked by Karmasaur to do a review of Tier 8 premium tanks. Now, unfortunately I don't own all of the Tier 8 premium tanks, but I do own a couple and I've played against them all at some time or another. So I thought I'd give a brief overview of them and whether a Tier 8 premium tank would be the right type of tank for you. I'll start with the T26E4, the Super Pershing. It's not currently available in the shops, but I believe it will be reintroduced in 8.8. The Super Pershing is a relatively well frontal armoured tank with a fairly poor top speed and a gun which historically has fairly poor penetration. The Super Pershing, I would personally say, is a great tank if you're wanting to train American medium crews. It has exactly the same crew layout as the M4 Sherman, the Jumbo, the EZ8, the T20, the T20, the M26, the normal Pershing, and also the later tanks, the M46 and the M48. Personally, which is something I'm going to be going on to later, as a training premium tank, I'd certainly give the Super Pershing a thumbs up. It's tough when played right. Medium to long range, the gun's not terribly accurate, and you have to really use premium rounds in order to make the shots count, as you can see here. But as a moneymaker, it's okay. But with the lack of penetration, it does mean that it's not that great. Moving on to the other American Tier 8 premium tank, the T34. That tank is largely the other way around. The turret, like the most of the American heavies, is pretty tough, and so you really want to be held down wherever you possibly can. The frontal hull armour is approximately the same as the T29, so it's easily penetratable by anything of its tier and above. The gun, however, is pretty awesome. It's largely the same gun as on the M103, so it's a pretty tough gun for a Tier 8 tank. I would therefore say that as a damaging tank and a tank for getting experience, for grinding other tanks, and also possibly for making money, the T34 is probably a better tank. Again, it's got the same crew layout as the American heavies, so it's a good training tank for American heavies, but with decent penetration and decent damage without using premium rounds, it's a good money maker as well. Going down to the British, they don't have any premium Tier 8 tanks yet, so that's largely ignorable. The Germans, they've got the Low, which, like the T34, is a reasonable good money maker. It used to be a lot better, but it's a good damaging tank, good sniper tank, fairly poor armour again. Sides and rear of the turret are also quite easily penetrated by most tanks of its tier. It's okay. I personally wouldn't buy one, probably even if I was training German heavy crews. It's similar to the Tiger, but it's alright. The Jag Tiger 88. It's an interesting one. This is the one that Karmasaur asked me to do a review on. I don't actually own it, but I've played against Jag Tigers, Jag Tiger 88, and I do own a Jag Panther, which has largely, well, one of the optional guns is the same gun, the 88mm, and with that, it's a good, okay tank with 88mm for a Tier 7. This is a Tier 8, which gets into Tier 9s. Against Tier 9s, the penetration is not enough without switching to premium again, so which largely puts this tank into the similar kind of category as the Super Pershing. Good DPM, reasonably good armour. The frontal armor on the Jag Tiger is pretty tough. It's certainly enough to be almost impervious to most tier 7 tanks and many tier 8s frontally. The lower plate is a notorious weak spot, and if angled nose down, many tanks can penetrate your frontal glacis quite easily, but square on, the front glacis is pretty tough. Side armour though is quite easily penetrated by a great number of tanks you'll be competing against. Rear armour, like most tanks, the rear armour is pretty poor, but that's penetration is better than the Super Pershings, but you're also lacking the turret, which makes up for that to a certain extent. So as a trainer, I'd say it probably ranks okay as a trainer, not too great as a moneymaker, quite so much. Goes down to the French. We have the FCM 50T. It's an interesting tank, this one. It's a heavy tank which plays rather like a medium. Gun's quite good, it's quite fast, armour's not that great. The gun actually does have reasonable penetration for its tier. It can quite easily penetrate 212mm, so I'd say that's actually not a bad tier 8 tank for just general damage and money making. Also, you can train your French crews in there as well, so that's pretty good. Going on slightly onto the Russian tanks, the IS-6, largely the same as the Super Pershing. Gun is pretty poor, armour is pretty good, accuracy is also pretty poor, so I'd actually rank that tank slightly lower than the Super Pershing somewhat. Other than that, it's fairly good mobility, so it's overall it's a good tank. I know a lot of people rate it. The DPM on it is insane, which makes it very good if you can get into a city fight with it. Combined with the good armour, it's not it's worthy of a purchase if you want a Russian heavy. Going on to the KV-5, this is a tank I actually do own. The KV-5, if you can pick it up when it's on, when it's available in the gift shop or in the main store, it's a good tank. The penetration is largely similar to the Super Pershing. Like the Super Pershing, it's got some enormous weak spots. The well documented R2D2 on the front. With the poor penetrating gun, it's actually okay in a stand-up fight. However, side scraping, using the gun at reasonable range is not terribly inaccurate. It's got good penetration with the premium rounds again. It's a good crew trainer. I've actually made over 120,000 silver with this gun, with this tank, and it's pretty good for a money maker. Crew trainer, it's perfectly reasonable. It's got largely the same crew as most of the Russian heavies. Moving on to the Chinese, well, currently they don't officially have one. The Type 59 is now a gift tank or reward tank rather than a premium, but the Type 59 is particularly tough for its tier. It got nerfed a few patches back, which reduced its mobility slightly but buffed its gun. Overall, it's a good tank. It's a very good trainer. Turret is as good as it's always been. Body, however, if anybody can shoot you in the glacis or in the tracks, you're dead meat. But overall, I'd say it's probably one of the best value ones if it ever is made available, or alternatively if you get it as a gift. But would I purchase one normally? Nah, I'm not terribly interested in Chinese tanks, but it's a good money earner, that's for certain. As I was saying before, I pretty much split the tier 8 premiums into two camps. You have the limited matchmaker, what I would refer to as training tanks. These are tanks which tend to have slightly lower penetration or slightly dodgy guns in other ways, which makes them very, very good for training crews from tanks above and below their tier number. But they tend to require premium rounds, which makes their efficiency in money making terms quite low, because a lot of your earnings are going to be going into funding ammunition for the damn things. Then you've got the other tanks, you've got like the FCM, the Low and the T-34. These I would be considering as pure money makers. They don't necessarily need premium rounds, which means that their ammunition costs are comparatively lower compared to the other tier 8s, the trainers as I'd refer to them. And this means that they're going to be just making money hand over fist. They're still good crew trainers, but they're definitely going to be making you more money, I suspect, than the things like the Super Pershing and such. As such, are there any alternatives? There are some good tier 7s which make good money makers. I own a Type 62. Said I wasn't interested in Chinese tanks, but I love light tanks, and the Type 62 I find to be quite a good money earner, earning well over 80,000 credits in a match, and very low expenditure. Repair costs are low, ammunition costs are low. A lot of people like the SU-12244. That's also a perfectly good XP grinder. I don't think it makes as much money though. I've not checked out the stats on that one's money making side. SU-100Y going down to tier 6. It's a good damage tank, but it's as big as a house. It's like having a Churchill gun carriage, and I've played the Churchill gun carriage and I wouldn't choose one of those. E25, too new, not had a chance to play with one yet. Panther M10, it's okay, only sees tier 8s, which isn't too bad, but like the E25, you're starting to run into the limitations of that 150mm penetration on the R70. British, the AT-15A, sadly I wouldn't touch it with the barge pole. It's got the same gun as the TOG, so you might as well buy the TOG. Hasn't got as good an armour, but the TOG's got a turret, and it's a much better tank in my opinion. Americans don't have any tier 7s, so there's not really anything else I'd really consider to be a massive money earner. The next video I'm planning on doing will be on the T-29 and T-32 American heavy tanks. I consider these to be both heavily related tanks and similar enough that I'll combine them both into one review. If anybody feels like subscribing, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and it'll always be nice to see if any other people agree with my comments here. Okay, thank you, and this is Hokum signing out. Bye.